Unfortunately, if there was somebody coming in, those planes are very small. So we had to work it between this needs to get out to these people need to get in. But then the volcano would blow some ash. And guess what? Nobody's moving.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier.
Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. And today's guest is a seasoned EH&S manager with over 15 years of experience, instrumental in reducing manufacturing accident rates by 81% and ensuring 98% compliance with environmental regulations across multiple facilities from Massachusetts to Alaska. Wow. Specialized in processing deep knowledge of safety protocols and environmental laws with a focus on hazardous materials, wastewater, and fostering a strong safety culture through effective training and continuous improvement initiatives. She is the EH&S Manager at Channel Fish Processing. Jess Goodhue, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. And you know what? The audience doesn't know, but you are super flexible and we had to bump around the schedule a little bit. You've been a pleasure to work with already. So I can't wait to get into it with you today.
I appreciate that. It's all part of the job.
You got it. So from Alaska to Massachusetts, back and forth, and everything you've done, Jess, what's been your biggest lesson learned?
Wow, that's a good one. My biggest lesson learned is communication. Massachusetts, Alaska, two different worlds, but if you can communicate effectively, it's going to only promote productivity. Communication allows you to build trust. It allows you to navigate challenges. If you can effectively help people to understand what's going on, you're going to have more participation as well. And I find that the more communication you have, and it opens up different channels, whether it's any level of management. The person on the floor doesn't always get to talk to the person up top. And so you're kind of that bridge. And yeah, I would say communicating effectively, biggest lesson learned, doesn't even matter what state you're in. And the language barrier, getting over that. If you can get the communication in there, you're bound to have people come to you. You're bound to end up teaching more, training more. And so it's just a wonderful thing.
First off, I definitely agree. And I have a few follow-up questions based on what you shared about communication. You said communication builds trust. Can you elaborate on that, or maybe how that's manifested itself in your world?
Absolutely. I find that when I had a team out in Alaska, I found to come to me is more important. If you have a hesitation, if you're like, this doesn't quite seem right or doesn't look right, I'd rather have people feel comfortable to come to you and say, hey, I'm not sure about this, versus just jumping in and doing something. That's where the mistake happens, is if they're unsure. Maybe they were trained and they're too nervous to say to their manager, I know I already have been told twice or whatever it may be, but they can go to the EHS manager and say, hey, listen, I think I was told this. Can I get a refresher real quick? And I'll be like, absolutely. I can send you resources. I can even show you why. Let me get the right PPE for you. And that just helps not just prevent accidents, but helps them to complete the task that they're doing as well. So you help each other with that trust.
That's awesome. I love break down barriers and, make yourself very approachable is what I'm hearing. And I like how you just kind of, you may not be the person they report directly to or be their direct manager, but you can be a resource. And it's also, you didn't say this, I'm gleaning this from it. It's fostering collaboration.
Absolutely. In all departments, we're a non-biased department as EHS. And so it allows us to work with anybody from the warehouse, the offices, production floors. And so having different people with that level of trust gets a lot done, and it allows us to have more eyes around the plant as well.
Love it. So with communication comes forms of, right? So have you found it to be the most effective forms, some more challenging? How do you actually communicate in your environment?
Definitely. Yeah. So Some environments, particularly when I was working out in Alaska, we had people from all different walks of life. You have different languages. You have people that maybe aren't very strong with their writing skills. And so you find ways to communicate. You're going to put as many pictures around, descriptions around, but the training is important. You want to make sure that if you don't have that language, that you're getting that language, because every training should be fully understood. And so if you have somebody that comes from a country that you don't normally have that language, maybe somebody else in the plant does. And maybe you can work with them to become a translator. And I think that's just the most important thing, is understanding what are the dangers of this job, or how can I make this job more ergonomic, things like that. If you don't have that language there, or the visual of seeing the picture of, okay, do not touch this, or this is step one, this is step two. Visuals are huge. I love videos. Some people find them a little dry, but it's, better than death by PowerPoint.
Yeah,
And
couldn't agree more.
in being interactive too, is if you have a translator, you can do scenarios and all that as well. And so it makes your trainings become a little bit more hearty in that understanding with communication.
So I want to go back to that because I like the picture thing reminds me of like Kaizen and lean and those processes, right? But you're using it for language barriers, and I know this is something we touched on in a previous conversation. But like different cultural backgrounds, I know you're kind of touching on it now, but how to really navigate that. And this, I don't think this has come up on the show yet, Jess. So it's a really good topic that I don't want to go by too quickly here. So I caught, you've got the videos, maybe there's a translation or a translator. You've got the pictures to be clear. Don't touch this, right? Or go this way. But could you say more on that?
Yeah. One of the companies I worked with was one of the largest in the seafood industry, and they actually operate in a very remote location, pretty close to a volcano, actually. It's wild. And there's no police station, there's no fire station. Your engineering teams or your hazmat team, and everybody kind of does these unique roles. So it's very important for everyone to understand what their role is. You're not just part of a team to make a plant operate, but you're part of a team for a culture of a lifestyle out there. And it's a unique lifestyle. So when you come into it, it's not necessarily something that everybody's used to. And so you get people from Mexico, Somalia, Ukraine, Serbia. We had everyone from everywhere. And everybody has different backgrounds. And so we're like, okay, well, there's housing here at the facility. So now these people are living together, they're working together, but they have different cultures. So we had to accommodate for dietary restrictions. We were accommodating for prayers and religious types of acts as well. And so some people may not understand it, but we had to put like signs in the bunkhouses to have them be like, hey, please don't do this for sanitary reasons, or hey, this is how we're going to do this. We're going to offer you this to help you with whatever you're doing. And so getting everybody to work together and exist together, understanding the languages and understanding what that culture is so important, because you want them to be happy and healthy and productive and still have their culture while they're there and mesh with everybody else as well. So that falls on all different shoulders, from EHS to HR, the facility operations. They have to be in the loop too. So it's another level of communicating and understanding when you can actually help people to embrace those cultures while working remote.
Wow. And I just picked up 4 or 5 countries, and if I'm correct, over 3 continents there. So that's got to be that you're spanning quite a lot.
No, I was going to say a fun little ad there. We actually had people from Fiji come, and the Fijians, they understood a little bit about what Alaska was like, but they didn't realize how cold it was, and they didn't all come fully prepared. So the company actually did like drives for everybody that was there for coats, layers, and just to keep them warm. So you have to remember the climate change as well.
Wow. That's quite the drastic change too. Fiji to Alaska. That's woof. Mm-hmm. So that sounds like a very large undertaking, from language to culture to like you said, prayer to, sanitary reasons. I mean, like, what type of a team does it take to get this going and have it be effective and safe and productive? Like, and how long does it take to get all these different people from different countries together and like rowing in the same direction, if you will?
Yeah. I came in, they already kind of had the structure of onboarding, getting everybody in there, getting them set in their position. But it takes just an ongoing journey. This is not something that you're going to find the end and be successful. It's something where you're constantly adapting, you're growing. We're learning ways of technology is growing, how to get communication out there. These people don't get to see their families as often because they're working certain schedules, maybe strange hours from where they are. And so everybody comes together. The safety teams, the environmental teams, like I was saying, the HR, it takes multiple meetings. You're always working with management to kind of enhance what we can do for them. So it's not really one goal, list. It's just that list is always going to grow and adapt. And so that's a beautiful thing too, that we can do that.
Awesome. Good for you. That's fantastic. I know another topic or thing for you that's important is the importance of implementation and being visible. It's something we chatted about briefly, and I'd love it if you could expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. A lot of EHS folks, they're so focused on the regulation. They're so focused on who's going to come in, who's our visitors today, what do they want to see? And that's great on paper. That's wonderful. You can go through that checklist and you can make sure you have all your inspections done. But to actually implement a program is to have people work together, to understand, to see that result working in the plant on the floor. And so being visible is very important. Not to backtrack, but it also involves that trust being built. If they don't know who to go to, it's very difficult for them to have that trust. So just doing your walkarounds, talking to people, figuring out, oh, can I help you with that? It seems like your back was, oh yeah, I stand in this position. I do this a lot. So you learn as you're visible. But having papers in a binder on a desk, yeah, great. You're checking it off. It's there. You have it on site. Wonderful. But to have it physically being used on site is probably the most beautiful thing in the EHS world that I can think of, is that when it's working for people, not just I put a program in, everyone's following the rules. It's that this helped somebody. It's helping someone in their everyday life, and it's helping different departments to work together. That's the ideal day is when you see that happening. The implementation is working.
I love that, especially so working for them and other departments are working together. Can you give an example, maybe a couple of examples of where you saw that play out?
Definitely. I can think of a couple of areas where, let's say PPE, for example, different departments can order that. And so they'll say, I have this thing, it does work, it does a great job. But on some days I switch to this other position. And so then EHS, meets up with production. We have meetings all the time and we'll just say, hey, I noticed that this person switches. Are we cross-training in this area? Yes, it works out for us that we can cross-train, or maybe you have a temp agency that has somebody who is more flexible. Then we just work together to get them trained up and as much as possible, but we want to make sure that they know the right PPE for that area. And that's just a whole program in itself, is knowing when to switch, what for QA, is this appropriate? And so you're working with the QA department, you're working with the production department, you're working with the temp agency to send that training maybe in advance, just so they know that this needs to go in this way. But at the end of the day, it really is seeing that person change that job, doing the right thing, coming back over, and then saying, oh, let's see if we can try that out with somebody else. And you realize that it's not just one person being fantastic at their job, it's the program that you have in place and doing it as a team.
I can only imagine how rewarding that is to watch it in motion.
Definitely. Anytime you get something that's created with a team and seeing it work out and knowing, okay, we can move forward, it's awesome. It really is fulfilling.
Oh, I'm sure. So not everything's a straight line. It doesn't always work out exactly as we planned. A, B, C, D, plan E, F, and then we didn't think of G, right? What are some of the biggest, and this is really for the benefit of myself and the whole audience and everyone listening right now, what nugget could they pick up? Like, you had this challenge and this is how you went through it, right? Like, what was one of your biggest challenges for you and your team, and like, how'd you deal with it?
I think working in like remote locations, a lot of people get limited by their resources and what they have. And sometimes it takes just thinking outside the box. I know it's a lot of people can say, well, that's easier said than done. But being able to automate and being able to eliminate the risk, I think, is the goal there. So especially in my position, but in other positions, let's say an example I had was we had a gentleman that was manually operating the chlorine for runoff on a mountain. And that was really, it's awesome that they have that type of water source that, and you can chlorinate it yourself and you can do everything. But then you're running with human error in there. And it's like, well, what if that guy isn't in that day? You have somebody else, do they know how often to go out there? Do they know what to turn to? So it took us, the solution. I talked to an electrician. He put a probe in and he was just like, yeah, we can monitor this and we can have this automated so that it's metered and that you just have a stroke for, chlorination. And I think that that is key, is being able to not take a job away. You want to automate because that guy, he's got 5 million other things to do. It's just directing their attention. But at the same time, you want to go through that hierarchy of controls, right? How high can we actually make this? Are we just working with the PPE or can we actually get to elimination? And I find that it does take thinking outside the box and not just saying these are our limits, these are our resources. It's creating, it's trying to make something that nobody thought was possible.
I like that a lot. I love that.
Yeah,
Everything's impossible until somebody does it, right, Jess?
it's just improbable, not impossible.
There you
That's the
go.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And someone goes and does it. Woo.
Right. And
Sorry to break your stride. Keep going.
no, that's perfect. Like that's exactly it, is that people see the probability of something working out or not working out and they get discouraged. And so you kind of take the next step and you say, well, which guy's not in this meeting right now? Whose viewpoint do we not have? And it might take another engineer, electrician, or whoever, the operator. Maybe it's the person itself. We're thinking about how we're going to get this job done, but the guy on the floor will say, actually, it's not going to work out that way. And let me tell you why. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, just trying to get to the elimination of the hazard or trying to get out the human error as much as possible. And by working together to do that is the goal at the end of the day. And it's overcoming a lot of challenges, but it's changing perspectives.
I like that too, changing perspectives. And I like how you exampled the person from the production floor, right? Comes up, or maybe an engineer, I forget the word you used. They said, no, that's not the way to do it. This is the way you should consider doing it, and just bring more minds into the room.
Mm-hmm.
Can I jump back to automation real quick? Because I like what you said about it's not about eliminating a job. I forget your exact words, but it's more about, you were augmenting it, or I'm not sure how you put it, but I like that. Like, it's not eliminating that gentleman's job. He has a bunch of things to do throughout the day, but it puts something in place. So if he's not there for a day, it still works, the chlorination process, right? So where else is automation showing up for you, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Automation can show up anywhere. I feel we're in a place right now, we're on the precipice where technology is changing again. AI is something that's coming out. A lot of people are afraid of it. We're trying to utilize that in EHS. But one example, something that's true to my heart, wastewater. I'm a big supporter of clean water, the Clean Water Act, because being out in Alaska, that was the last frontier. And it's just so beautiful to see what's really out there if you can preserve it. But even for Massachusetts, wastewater, we actually had come up at a plant, and it was just a couple of parameters that were just a little out of scope, and it got us curious, like why is this happening? And okay, if your limit is this, and how do we make this for us? And so every plant is different. Some of them can make compliance easy, some of them can't. But it's a matter of, is your permit working for you, or are you just working for it? And so it was an example of looking back and seeing, okay, you have your elimination. Let's see, how do we eliminate this from going outside of a parameter? So we started digging, we looked in, we started looking at who's using this, how is it happening? And so we found that chemical handling was the easiest way to kind of reassess how we could manage the wastewater parameters better. And so that opened up a whole entire wonderful world of SOPs and training, and what is the chemical and where is it and how are they doing it? And it allows for more control, a controlled environment. You can have variables, but they want to be controlled variables. And so it was as simple as training the main employee that was handling a certain chemical and just being able to put a pump on it, because that once again allowed them to be sure that they were getting the right amount. And if there ever was to be a spill, it's actually contained within that type of pump. And so you don't have that higher risk of having an extra parameter spike or anything like that, because you're kind of going through your A, B, C, and even Z if possible. Now, is there a chance for someone to do something different? 100%. What are we going to do? Back to the SOPs, back to the training. Can we improve those? Yes, we can. And so once again, it's always ongoing, but another example of how you can automate and get to that, not necessarily elimination, a little bit more of the substitution by putting the pumps there.
Great example. Really, really good. I like what you said. Is your permit working for you, or are you just working for it? So going back to remote, I'm going to joke with you for a minute here, and the audience will probably have a chuckle about this. But when we first talked, you're like, "Hey, Jay, I'm adapting to remote life." And I'm thinking, "Oh, she means Zoom. She means Teams." No, no, no. She means working in Alaska or a volcano. So is there anything else you could expand on with that? Because I think that this is the first time that's come up on the show. And there's challenges there that none of us, or I certainly have never thought of. So yeah, is there more there?
Absolutely. There's so much more. You don't have enough time to record with this one, but I'll give you some samples. When I had to take some wastewater samples, we had to send out for regulation to prep for the course, just very simple stuff, to a normal facility. Now, my samples would actually go on a plane at an airport, and they would be sent out, and they would go to a lab because we didn't have the lab that was able to do what we need to do. Unfortunately, if there was somebody coming in, those planes are very small. So we had to work it between this needs to get out to these people need to get in, but then the volcano would blow some ash, and guess what? Nobody's moving. So that was the thing, was we had to plan around volcanoes. We had to plan around being able to get people out and in, what's important. And it really does become a matter of, this is maybe this person's sick. They need to get out first. And so you're looking at, human life on adapting. And also just temperature wise, I think the first time I went to Alaska in October around this time, it was -7 by Halloween. And so that's another thing too, is dealing with the elements, with, how are we going to get things done, and, snow and cold. But yeah, you're adapting to every single thing about it. You're adapting on how you're transporting things, how often, but even just for the lifestyle itself, I was talking about, people being warmer, working on boats. That one was crazy. I was always, for example, I remember they called me up, and I originally went out for weeks to even like months at a time. But one of them called me up, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to take you out. We're going to do, this many hours or whatever." Ends up going out for days longer. And you're like, okay, what do I have for resources to get through that? What does the boat have? And so you get really crafty. And especially being a woman on a vessel, that's a curveball and a half. And you find ways to accomplish it. You figure out that the sailors on the vessel, the captain, they have a different lifestyle as well. And you just become part of their like small floating town, and you kind of end up doing what they're doing. And sometimes you might even be like, I don't know if this is most sanitary. You might be able to do it a little different, but at the same time, you're fitting into that culture too. So you're definitely adapting to personalities of people that have been out to sea more than they've been on land. You're adapting to the elements. Like I said, you can't plan for a volcano blowing ash, but you got to plan on figuring out what's your plan B to get those samples out. Can we put it on a lobster boat? Well, how often are they going out there? And so that's what we would do.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Coludus, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Coludus is there to make hard work easy. Visit coludus.com today to get started.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're adapting to their small floating town. Definitely a first on the show. That's pretty wild to think about that. Really is. And then to go for days beyond what you think you're supposed to be out there for is incredible.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make any other assumptions here. So how does the product get to the processing facility, and then how do you get it out for distribution? Is it all shipping?
It depends on the company, depends on the plant. I've worked for a couple that do it very differently. One of the companies, they actually had a processing vessel, which was a very cool thing to be on. I took a float plane in and landed. There were whales all around the vessel, and you're just like wow, these people are just working with these creatures in their own environment, and they're not being bothered, you're not being bothered. And then it almost looks like Star Wars. The boats pull into the back of these processing vessels, and that it's just straight from the fish to the plate very quickly, because they actually process it all right there on the vessel. And so it's amazing to think about how many people can work on these boats and get that much done in an A season. And that's great because it's incredibly fresh. And so then sometimes, it has to get to the plant. If you're in a remote location, even better because it's getting to that plant quickly, which is really, really cool. But even if it's not, so you're doing a secondary process, it all happens very quickly. And that's a matter of, you only have such little time. It's a matter of what type of equipment they're working with. Is there a machine that can fillet something very quickly, or is it something that can do multiple things to this fish or this octopus or lobster or crab, whatever it may be? And so a lot of the machinery that I work with engineers, we can't talk about it. The companies, they own their custom machine that does these wild things. And it's very efficient, very clean. And even the waste process after utilizing all the parts of the fish, it's all very quick, but at the same time, it's amazing to see the custom the technology that's in there that's invested. Teams from all over come for these companies to get that fish or crab, whatever ocean critter it's to get it processed as fast as possible. Yeah.
Fascinating. Wow.
Yep.
And to
you're,
think about
and you're testing the water too, just a heads up around it. Like everything is being checked. The company, they're all very green. So that's another thing to consider. I was talking about the whales in the beginning, but they're checking constantly those parameters and moving those vessels.
So to make sure that the vessel isn't contaminating the water, or for what reason are they testing?
Exactly that. So
Okay.
so as you were at a facility that's on land and they're testing, your discharge to the water, same thing with those vessels. They're making sure that those parameters stay the same, and they only have a limited time by the government to say, hey, you can stay here and then you got to move on. So just to keep you in the loop on that one too, is that these floating cities are making sure they're not having environmental impact as well.
It's great information. So I want to jump back real quick because you and I could probably talk for a couple of days because this is it's not to mention it's super interesting and the first time we've talked about this stuff on a show. So where does environmental and safety cross over for an EHS manager? That's something we talked about too, Jess.
Yeah, definitely. So EHS, environmental health and safety, right? It's all in the name. But we're going to include facilities. We're going to include operations as well, because that's all they're a team and everybody's working together. But it's the process of how you go about it. So when you identify a problem, or if you're trying to improve something, it's almost like you're going through a chain of processes. You're identifying something, you're working on an SOP, and you're having training. That's going to go all the way from environmental, health, safety, operations to the guy who's running that machine, to the person that is checking, inspecting, or understanding. You're still implementing the same process. Identification, you're going through your hierarchy of controls. That implies for safety as well. People think, okay, well, yeah, I'm making sure I'm doing the best I can for the environment, but it's also, hey, there is instruction for this. There is training for this. There's follow-up on this, and you're going to constantly be checking and having your own inspections as well. So they've run very parallel all the time, and actually they, in a way, work together.
Back to the integration and communication, right, between departments as well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful web.
So here we go, right? What's your favorite part of the job? What do you love most about your job?
Yeah. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have said the things that I've seen in the travel. I remember at one point, I actually took a jet ski off of one of those processing vessels past the pot of whales to a float plane. That was the craziest thing I think I've ever done. And it wasn't planned. It was just like someone I knew, and it all kind of worked out. But no, now it's seeing the impact that you have. I remember working with a company that had bacteria growing on the seabeds, and it was taking out the oxygen. And so it wasn't allowing the critters around the plants to thrive. And so we worked with dive surveys, dredging, how to utilize the byproducts so it wasn't creating or enabling this bacteria. And now knowing, I flew around plant to plant, which is trying to help out that program. And knowing now that what I've done for the seabeds, out in Alaska, or even here for that person that doesn't feel that pain doing a job or doesn't have to, stand in that one spot, whatever it may be, it's fulfilling. It's seeing the inspiration from them after they're happy of what you've done. So, you can see in the people in the safety, you don't get to see the environment, but you still fulfilled knowing that there are more fish there, that there's more life there, that you're helping to sustain an entire environment, acres of it. It's a wonderful thing to be able to feel.
Oh, that's a hell of a why. I'm gonna label
Yeah,
it for you, right? Like if you have a why, that's really cool. It's something larger than you. That's awesome. That's great.
definitely.
A lot of people have talked about mentors and people we learn from or how we get our start. And is there a person or a group of people or anyone who might have inspired you to get into this career path or this trajectory you're on for you personally?
Yeah, yeah. There are two people in particular in my life that started me, and then I could talk about two people that kind of helped me figure out where I need to go. So growing up, my best friend's dad, he was a Mass Maritime grad. He was an engineer. He was always building motorcycles and cutting sheet metal and doing all these crazy things. He had all these tools and equipment in his garage. That's where I grew up. They lived behind my house, and that was my best friend John. Him and his dad taught me how to work with my hands, how to fix things. And I think it's a very underrated skill to be able to fix things around your home and do things for yourself. In a pinch, it's amazing. But it helped me grow into wanting to work with my hands and to build. The other side of the coin was my grandmother. She was an old Irish style grandmother. And she was like, hey, listen, we don't have a ton of money. So whatever you're doing, if you want to see the world, that's what your job's gonna have to be. And so I was like, wow, what could I do that could allow me to see more and understand more for culture? And boats. That was where we landed, was talking about adventuring and loving for biology and everything. And so she inspired me to go to Mass Maritime, which once again, my best friend's dad had already gone. And so I was like, this is probably the career path that I can start on and see where I end up. And then it was after I had jumped in with my first company. There was a guy who worked in environmental compliance, and he was like, hey, Alaska is the place to be. I think that if you can get out there, you can see what can be done, where the improvements are. It's just starting its journey for environmental health and safety. And I think that is a realm. And so he took me under his wing and showed me, this is what you don't want to see, and this is what you do want to see, and here's what standards are. And then his boss took me even further and was like, listen, there's some bigger projects here. And he gave me a chance to participate in that larger project I was talking about with the bacteria in the seabeds. They gave me opportunity. And so I have these people that were kind of setting me up in the beginning that were, my friends and family, saying opportunity is out there. And then I have the people saying, here's your chance. So it's an amazing track to be able to take. And it takes a person to seize the opportunity. But yeah, I always believe in going for it, because at the end of the day, good experience, bad experience, it's experience, and it's going to help you no matter what.
Oh, that's a great mindset. That take the chance, say yes, right? Say yes to those opportunities. What a great story, Jess. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
And motorcycles and sheet metal. I'd be interested in what was being made with all of that. That's cool.
As kids, I think we're making like potato guns and, PVC pipes and compressors, wild stuff for like fourth, fifth grade. I don't even know where we started.
Good stuff. You mentioned MMA, Mass Maritime Academy, and as we've discussed, that's really near and dear to us here at Facility Rockstars and me personally. And we've aligned with the school. I think we've had 16 or 17 guests on so far. We interviewed 3 cadets recently at a show. And anything more on Mass Maritime from you personally? Yeah.
That could take a whole nother show. But I will say that my experiences there help me every day at my job. It helps me to be prepared. It helps me not to get frazzled during an emergency. They do a great job integrating how to successfully complete something that is very important, and how not to let it get to you, how to complete the task in the moment, and then to move back and say, okay, let's take this a step back and now fix everything. Great, wonderful. What's next? That's the most amazing thing. I'm not going to say it taught me how to autopilot, but it taught me how to stay calm, focus, and get the job done. Also, just through that networking opportunity, the second people that were the mentor, I met them at a career fair at the college. And so the college is just fantastic for getting people where they want to go. It's that networking on, you know what, I think we have another cadet that works in this area. Maybe you should check it out. And having those steps of discipline as well along the way helps you to kind of understand the structure. For me, working on vessels, not everybody from Mass Maritime works on vessels, but cleanliness, being in small spaces, with the hands-on ability, all those things helped me because then when I got to a vessel, it wasn't just, oh, I only read this in a book. It was, yeah, let me get my hands on that. I've done this once or twice. If you want to oversee, I'm prepared for this. Or it was a matter of, it's just washing your hands in cleanliness, because one person gets sick on a vessel, everybody gets sick on a vessel. So you learn how to kind of keep your things tidy in these small spaces, and how to make the lifestyle work. And that, to take the steps back again, talks about adapting. I think a lot of that came from what I was taught at that school as well. You had to adapt to that little lifestyle and its own thing. When you're in the regiment, you're in the regiment. It's their way or the highway. And so when you get on a vessel, it's their way or the highway. And so you're kind of like, okay, where do I fit? How do I make this work? They teach you the steps to do it. Very cool. I recommend it for everyone.
I can feel the passion. I can see it. I can hear it. I can feel it from you. I mean, it's incredible what the school does. And you know what? I think you made a great distinction. It might have been the thing we discussed prior, but it takes someone willing to take action, right? And that's saying yes to things. But you seized the day with what they were bringing for you. You're in the regiment. You're in the regiment. And I think it's amazing how they do, if you choose to embrace it, prepare you so very well. Everyone I've met has been and my dad's a grad. I mean, it's a great organization, and they're taking it to the next level every day, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the greenest campuses. I don't know if it's New England or something like that. I remember I was in like a green club, and we're talking about, popping diesel to make like a biodiesel out of bacteria. They're so forward in their research. So not just on the safety and facility side, but they're trying to be green. I think they have solar panels on their trash compactors and things like that. They have the windmill. And so I think they're also part of the future for those where engineering and facilities cross over with environmental. I believe that they're at the precipice of that too.
Oh, they're doing an amazing job. And they have a whole new geothermal loop that they're finishing up in the parking lot right now. It's just very cool.
Yep.
It just keeps
the
going
library's
and going.
Geothermal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, we've learned a ton from you. Now, I want to dig in a little bit and, learn a little more about you, Jess. So hobbies, like what do you do when you're not processing fish and keeping things safe and building processes?
Yeah. I am a person of skill. If you haven't figured it out already, I love to acquire skills. I knit. I learned that from the old fisherwomen that used to wait for their husbands out to sea. When I was in these small sea towns in Alaska, they taught me that they used to make nets this way, and they taught me how to knit, and they would tell me the story. And so I learned how to dye the wools too. They used to take paintings of the different jetties and where the boats were, and they'd take the colors and they would dye the wool. But also I fish. I used to fish almost every day, salt and fresh. At the academy, that was that was the best fish I think I've caught in a long time. But
I think, can I pause you for a sec on that?
Yeah.
We had a discussion a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was so cool. You're like, hey, when you can go to school and then go pull a striper out of the canal and go back to class, like what's better than that? Like that's someone really loves it when they say that to you.
Yes. That's exactly it. Is like, I learned better fishing out there. And then also I came back home and I'm like, okay, yeah. So what else do we have? I want to be able to freshwater fish, and then I want to be able to ice fish. And so it just allows you to go and rest your mind, because when you are working in these fast-paced jobs, you're constantly thinking, what's the next project? And so fishing allows you to kind of pause and appreciate that you're just out there. You don't always expect to catch something, but just to be able to sit for a moment, stare into maybe your night fishing. I use LEDs. I love that. And it calms me. So that's one of my favorite hobbies too. And everyone says, wow, you work with fish. You must be sick and tired of fish. I'm like, no, you want to go fishing right now? I would love the time.
That's great.
Yep.
I loved your story about knitting. Like, how many people have learned how to do that the way you learned how to do it? A handful? Not many.
Yeah, just a handful. I had a little bit of skills from my grandmother. She actually was legally blind, and her mother, and they not her whole life. It went with time. but I was able to help set her up. And so I had basic knitting skills. And then it wasn't until I went out to those women out there talking about the nets, and I realized, like, back in the day, old Irish cables, those are all telling stories through the twists and turns. They learn that through the nets and things like that. It's very, very cool, for at least for my Irish culture. But to be there at the ocean side, that my grandmother used to tell me that, back in Ireland, this is what they did, and then see it firsthand. These sea towns are still doing things like that. Very cool.
That's awesome. Wow. All right. I'm going to ask you the two most important questions of the entire show now.
No pressure.
Ready? All right. You love fish. So first off, what's your favorite fish to catch?
It's tide. There's two. For Massachusetts, it's striped bass, 100%. I love to catch it, eat it. We actually, I think it was right before Father's Day, we did a trip and we did different samples on, how you can treat it, what we're going to put on it. We did like red pepper, lemon, and just had a whole buffet of striped bass. But also halibut. Halibut out in Alaska is one of the coolest things. When you pull something like that up, it's, first of all, they're all monsters. And then I remember being right at the dock where we were working. And so we brought it inside, and we had these nice chunk fillets. We put them in a skillet, pepper and salt, and we took them to all the offices and had this just giant fresh halibut. And like, not too many people get that opportunity, but that's the best fish I've ever had. So that's the one I love to catch.
That's awesome. Well, you answered the second question too, because it was, which one do you like to eat the most? And I think you just answered it.
Yeah. A lot of people, when they eat fish, like, I don't really like the salty. I don't really like the flavor. It's like, listen, if you get it fresh, it does not taste that way. If you pull it right from the ocean. I have so many people that I'll take fishing and we'll catch something and then we'll cook it up, and they're like, wow, I never thought I'd like fish. And I'm just like, well, welcome to the club. There's a whole world out there to discover new fish every day.
You can't go wrong with halibut, that's for sure.
Yep.
And just quickly on that note, I have a friend and previous coworker who likes to fish. He's a commercial fisherman, and people say, "Oh, I don't eat bluefish. I don't like the oily taste." Okay, well, he cooks it, and I thought it tasted like a piece of French toast. It was so good.
That's
like,
awesome.
He smokes it. I don't know what he does with it, but it's amazing. So
he probably keeps a secret recipe.
Exactly. Jess, you're an absolute pleasure. I'm so honored to have met you and spent this time on the show with you. Thank you so much for investing your time. Oh, how can people get in touch with you? Because I'm sure there's more questions. There's always questions after the show, and people tell me all the time how people reached out, right? What's the best way to do that with you?
Probably just email. After that, we can branch off. But my email is my first initial last name, so jgoodhue@channelfish.com. Of course, there's fish in the name. Shocking. But yeah, that's the company I'm working with right now. It's brilliant. But if you ever just want to drop me a line, a question, feel free. My email box is always open. There's no such thing as a silly question. Or even if you just want to hear more about, going out there and then seeing what that's like, I'm always here. So yeah, jgoodhue@channelfish.com. Thanks for asking that one.
Of course. And thanks again for being on the show. You're an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate it. You're busy and you invested your time with us, and I know we all appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it too. Have a good one.
You too. And thanks for tuning in and listening to Facility Rockstars. I hope you enjoyed the episode with Jess. I'm sure you did. And until next time, everybody have a great week.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.